All right, my name is Whitney King-Hyens, and I am an instructor here at the Salt Lake Community College, and I'm going to show you today how to cut mats for the art showcase, as a presentation for the art showcase. So I'm going to walk you through the steps that it takes to cut a mat, and I have a somewhat simple way that I like to do this. And here, these are examples here. Let me bring this back up. This is an example of how you would mat an artwork that is a landscape format with the hinge at the top. And this is a portrait format mat that I cut, and the hinge is at the side like you're opening up a book. All right, I'm going to start off with this photograph. And this photograph, I measured it. It's 5 by 7 exactly. And I'm going to use a conservation board or museum board. This is 4-ply. I like the museum or conservation board because it's solid all the way through. You don't have any discoloring like an illustration board would have. So I'm going to use this museum, it's also known as conservation board, for the mat. So I'm going to go ahead and with this I'm going to be, since it's a landscape format, I'm going to be arranging this so it's in the landscape format on the board. And I'm going to go ahead and just draw out the dimensions and trying to center it the best I can on the board with my pencil. So this is an 11 by 14 inch board. So I'm going to actually just go in and start at the center, and I'm going to count my dimensions out from the center for my measurement. So it's 2, 4, 6, and 1/2, and 1/2, that makes 7. And with this here, I'm actually going to come in just a tiny little bit because I want to make sure that I don't have any extra. What I do, I don't have a T-square, which I've, so I'm just going to do those exact measurements on the top and bottom, and then use those marks to draw my lines out. It's good to have a nice sharp. I just simply start from the horizontal part, or the landscape part. I start from the center because that wants to be centered. So 14 inches, the center is 7, and then I just count out from there how many inches. So this is 7 inches across. I mark it on both ends and then draw that out. And then from the top and bottom, that's 5 inches I've marked out. So here, I start from the center here. This is 11 inches. I start from the center, 5.5. I count out, and then I shift it up, just not quite a 1/4 of an inch, but you know, you'll have to see, depending on how big or how small your image is, how much you want to do to make it to make your photograph have a little, or your artwork have a little more room on the bottom than on the top. So here I've shifted it up so I have a little more room on the bottom, and so I just shifted it up just a little bit, not even a 1/4 of an inch. And then what I'm going to do now is, after I draw it out, I'm going to just see if that's going to be a sufficient enough room at the bottom. And if it isn't, then I can just erase the lines and then draw them again. But I think it looks good. You don't want it to be up too high. So this is just
slide that
right
in
now, for this print.
and work off of that since you have it lined up, right?
And position this on my map cutter.
Are you doing it the opposite
here,
way?
and
No, I'm just
the
trying
map
to.
cutter that I
No, you're
have
good.
So you want me
is
to
a
show the
Logan.
mat like this? The cutter? The blade?
So one thing that would be helpful is, like, when you were talking about how it has some markings on here and how the blade drops
Okay,
down,
to show here.
you were holding it up here that was out of frame. So if you
So do it.
explain it again, and then go ahead and do your mat cutting, 1 cut or 2 cuts, and just try to hold the brace a little lower so I can see. Yeah. All right, here we go.
All right, one thing that I really love about the Logan cutter is that it's designed to make this really easy. So here with the blade is designed to come out just about a 1/4 of an inch, so it just cuts through the board. And by design too, the mat cutter here has a white line this white line is what you line up with your pencil marks
to make sure that you're
on the
cutting
board.
bevel the right way.
Here you just want to think about it, take some time, take a deep breath to think about which way you want the bevel to go. Remember, this is the back. I've drawn all my pencil marks on the back so I don't have to erase anything. So I want to make sure my bevel is going the right direction. And then from here, I just simply line up the pencil mark with the white line, and I put pressure here on this straight edge part, and the blade rests right on this, directly on this track that's on the straight edge. And when I line that up, once it's lined up, I press the blade in. Once I get to the other line, lining those up, I stop and pull the blade out. And then I reposition it. And I plan on doing, you want to plan on doing about 4 or 5 cuts. You don't want to do everything all at once. You want to think of it more or less scoring through the board rather than directly cutting through the board.
You want to think about it like you're scoring with the blade. And
then you just work your way around.
You'll eventually cut all the way through.
Good. That was good.
Super thorough, so hopefully.
Do you mind doing
my-
one pass where you just hold further down? Because what happens is your hand covers where you end. So one more time,
I realize that.
and actually you can just fake it. So
Okay. So what I'm
Also, one
saying
thing that I
doesn't matter.
I think all you gotta do is do a
do
pass,
it.
and then
a similar
if we
board
need to
that you're cutting
use that
into
instead of something
can be
else, that's fine.
placed in, the map
if it helps you to talk
You
through it,
always want
that's
to
fine.
cut into something. If you don't cut into anything, you have a tendency, the blade will kind of tear through, and you'll have tear marks in the front of your board. All right, so line this up again.
I wasn't quite lined up that time. Let me try one more time.
You can't really tell
You
from
won't
the
be
camera.
able-
You can't see the line. from
Oh,
the
you
camera.
can't? Okay.
So you're good.
Okay.
That
Okay,
should
cool.
fall right out, and then again, it planned a little overcut, so with the bevel, since it's cutting out, there's a little overcut, so you won't have any missed edges here. And you may have a little bit, you may be able to see that a little bit, but that's okay. That's a real normal part of the mat cutting. So this actually turned out quite well. And now I'm going to go ahead and assemble my mat and show you how to assemble your print or your artwork inside the mat. So since this is horizontal, I'm going to be hinging it from the top here. And I'm going to be using some linen tape. So I have this archival linen tape that I use. It's acid-free, and it's something that you have to add moisture to. I think they do have some adhesive linen tape that you use. Linen tape is preferred for this because it lays flat. You won't be able to see any of that, any of those bumps or bulges in your end result. So I've cut a little piece of this tape already, and to get it wet, rather than licking and sticking, I've got this towel that I've placed in some water. You can use a sponge. Just since this is, I've got archival stuff, so I want to keep things as acid-free as possible. You don't have to give it too much moisture, just enough so it sticks down. While it's still wet, you want to go ahead and fold it over, and especially while it's wet, you want to position it so it's straight. Once it's in its position, you go ahead and give it some good pressure here, so that creates a nice crease. As this dries, it will dry flat, and that crease will be a nice permanent crease for a nice flat display for your artwork. All right, so now I'm ready here to position my photograph in here. And the other thing that I use, rather than mounting my artwork before I do this, I like to use photo corners, and this gives you some flexibility, so if you have a tendency to make artwork the same size, you can change it out at a later time. I like to do that. Recycling is always good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and position this inside my frame. Okay, so line it up. And once you have it lined up the best you can, I have another tool that I have here that I like to use a lot is this anti-static cloth. And I'm going to use that once I get this in position. I'll use this to hold the print down in place so I don't get my fingerprints all over it. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to use this, and again I'm going to hold that down so I can put my photo corners on. Get these ready here. And I like to work first on the diagonal. And it should be pretty well in place, but I'll put 2 more on the other 2 corners just to kind of seal the deal here. And this nice soft cloth works well to get the dust off as well. And then it's and that is how you mount your work. If you want, you can sign and date at the bottom of your artwork. And for display for the art show, we use little clips that will support it and hang it securely onto the walls. So this is just perfect. And if you want to take it a step further, after your mat is cut, you can also find frames relatively inexpensively and put this in a frame. Right, that's it. Thank you.
Beautiful, baby. One cut.